Well, hello again, guys, from here at Whitley Park. Now, for the purposes of sound and warmth, I've just stepped inside the dugout here on the touchline. Yes, it's cold and windy on Tyneside here today, but inside just now with Eddie Howe, well, it was a relatively hot press conference, 2 days before Christmas. You think it might be fairly low-key, but incredibly newsy. A lot to come from it. We'll pick through all of that. We've got a really important update on the Martin Dubrvaka situation, injuries, lots of injury news to get through, and the latest on will Newcastle spend any money in January. But first of all, I want to start with my questions to Eddie. And as I say, it's 2 days before Christmas. It's not the normal routine. It's a Monday. You've got kids jumping into bed with you. It's all a little bit bizarre. You realise you've got to go and see Eddie Howe in 45 minutes. And I was flicking through my phone, and just to add to that bizarre feel, the first story that popped up was one about Bournemouth qualifying for the Champions League this season. Now, of course, the crux of that tale is that Bournemouth are currently in 5th, and the coefficient, the way it is, would have the Premier League getting the extra place. Now, of course, that depends on how teams perform in Europe post-Christmas, but as it stands, they're in a good position there. And it was the question I asked of Eddie. Now, there's been all this talk of the reality of where the club is currently at. I wrote a piece about it 10 days ago. Some fans, that vocal minority, didn't like it. I'm sorry, guys. It's the reality of where they're at. Eddie Howe himself outlined it really eloquently a week ago as well. In a PSR world, and for everything around that, there's on the back of that, there's the training ground, the stadium not quite being as far down the track as we thought. Newcastle now do have the challenge of keeping those very top stars happy and at the club. There's a reason there's all this speculation about them, because it is true, because that is real. There is a chance that if Newcastle aren't moving as quickly as those top players want and in the direction to the destination they see themselves performing in and at, well, yeah, we are probably going to have to revisit that down the line. But how do you keep them here? How do you keep them happy? Well, one answer to that potentially is a 5th place finish in the Champions League. And is that possible? And that was what I put to Eddie Howe. And he said, well, fundamentally, a successful team keeps players happy. The better the team are doing on the pitch, the more chance you've got of keeping these stars. To that end, he said, the improvement in league form and all the signs that could continue, coupled with a Carabao Cup semi-final on the horizon, that improves the feel good. I then pressed him specifically on that idea of Champions League and European football. And he said, well, yes, the ambition, we're not shying away from that, is to qualify for Europe. But Champions League, he admitted that is the holy grail. And if you've got that, then of course it makes it a damn sight easier, and it will go a hell of a long way to keeping those stars happy and to keeping them here beyond this season and beyond that too. But also within the context of his answer, I think it comes back on the players as well. And yes, the club have to create the right environment in terms of everything around that, the care for them, where they train, how they travel, contract situations as well. But, and this speaks to the answer Eddie gave about Alexander Isak 8 or 9 weeks ago. It was on the back of, I'd written the story in the Confidential column about those contract talks not taking place, despite reports he was set to sign a new deal. I said there'd been sort of brief, preliminary, really informal discussions at the back end of last season. They were no longer going on, and there were no contract talks. And that was the situation where it left a slight question mark over his future come the end of this campaign. Well, at the time, Eddie said, right, okay, there's all of that, but ultimately it goes back on the players. And if you think you're a Champions League player and you want to play in that domain, well, play like it. Achieve that here if that's what you really want. Well, since Eddie said all of that, and he did put it back on the players, there has been that improvement, certainly in terms of Alexander Isak. I think at the point when those stories were written, he'd only scored 1 goal in 7 and he'd missed 2 or 3 games because of injury. He wasn't necessarily in a good place. Well, wow, what have we seen since from Alexander Isak, culminating in that hat-trick down at Ipswich on Saturday. And that is true, if Tonali, if Bruno, if Isak, if Botman, if others, if Joelinton, Anthony Gordon, if they want to play in the Champions League, go and finish 5th this year. Now, is that realistic, and why am I sort of putting the ceiling on 5th? I honestly think, guys, the top 4 has gone. In terms of Arsenal, Liverpool and Chelsea, now you might say the question mark is Manchester City, but even given the bad run Manchester City have had, they are still above Newcastle on the table. And I would expect those 4 post-January to kick on and probably be the top 4. But beyond that, is there any reason Newcastle cannot finish in 5th position? At the start of the season, my prediction was 5th, and with that hope of it being enough to qualify for the Champions League. Now, look at Spurs yesterday. Newcastle are better than Spurs for me. Manchester United, I've said for a long time, Manchester United are awful. The manager who's come in there, what a job he's got on his hands. Newcastle are better than Manchester United. Who have you got beyond that? Aston Villa on Boxing Day. Well, Villa might be informative, because my suspicion is that Villa are perhaps Newcastle's most lively contender for the 5th place. There's every chance they have the season that Newcastle did last year, especially if going through to the latter stages of the Champions League, where they struggle to marry the two together. And if Newcastle go and beat Villa on Boxing Day, and by the way, we'll come to the prediction, that puts them in a really strong position. It might actually even put them in the top 5, given they're only 2 points off that position now. So for me, the last week, the victories, the slight turning of the corner, I'm not prepared to commit to the corner being fully turned yet until they do it over a greater period of time and against better teams too. But they've certainly answered some questions, and that one of the criticisms was they're struggling to put away those lesser teams. Well, they've done it now with 3 in the space of a week, albeit 1 in the cup. Players are playing with confidence, and confidence is so big. We talk about those little marginal gains that make the difference. All of a sudden, Isak, Gordon, Tonali, Bruno, they're playing with a real swagger and belief in themselves and a belief in each other. So there's everything to suggest there that Newcastle can take this momentum, and without the punctuation of the international breaks, a couple of international breaks really did. Just when you thought Newcastle were getting back to where they should be, that last international break in November especially killed them when they returned to be beaten by West Ham. So there's every reason now to feel far more positive with players as well. And this is crucially, we've been saying it for a while, haven't we? Play players where they want to play, where they look most comfortable. Anthony Gordon on the left, keep him there. Jacob Murphy is a right winger on the right, play him there. Sandro Tonali in that number 6, that conductor. Wow, how much of an impact has that had on the team? Bruno Guimaraes in the 8. I loved a goal that wasn't scored down at Ipswich on Saturday when Bruno gets in the area and the header off the bottom of the post. That is what he can do. Reminiscent, I've said it many times, my favourite Newcastle goal of recent years, Bruno's diving header against Leicester in the last minute at St James's Park a couple of seasons back. Well, getting into the box and doing that against Ipswich, that's what he can do. Creating the goal for Alexander Isak by pressing in the penalty area. That switch between those two players, Bruno and Tonali, I use the word all the time, I think it's unlocked everything, and let's hope it locks in Newcastle's revival. Because I also think now as well, we've spoken so long about, it's almost the big 3, Bruno, Gordon and Isak. What's the contract say? What's the release clause? Who wants them? Arsenal, Manchester City, Liverpool. There's more than that now. You can put Sandro Tonali into that bracket. Joelinton, for me, still got to do a little bit more, but has the potential to step up and be in that conversation of elite players who need Champions League. Sven Botman is coming back. He got some more minutes in a behind closed doors game. There's a little word that he might actually be on the bench against Aston Villa on Boxing Day. If Botman comes back the player of the first season, will he be talking about him in that bracket with those very top stars? That's half a team. That is a lot of players, and that is why, for me, when you look at the league table and what Newcastle have done the past week and what they should be capable of, and these little changes that have brought about this improvement, if that stays and these players stay fit and in form, 5th position, yes, absolutely, to go back to it. And Eddie Howe didn't shy away from that there this morning. I think that's really significant. Now, a conversation we were just having amongst ourselves inside there was that, can Newcastle replace Alexander Isak? Is it even possible if they don't get the football he wants at the end of the season? And trust me, guys, if they're not in the Champions League, I honestly think we probably would see Isak move on. That is why everything I've just spoken about is so doubly important. Can you replace him? Well, no, you can't. But that, if you get £150 million, £100 million, whatever it is for Alexander Isak potentially, and let's hope it doesn't come to that, you wouldn't then just go out and spend that money on a replacement. It's just not possible. What the club then has to do, and this is part of that evolution in that journey, is go out and find the next Alexander Isak, a player for 50, 60, 70 million pound who can kick on, and where you have identified that improvement and that ability. And look at the Isak deal now. It's still a club record 63 million pound, but wow, was that money well spent? And there's a debate, where is he in the ranking of top strikers in the world? Well, certainly he gives more than Erling Haaland outside scoring goals. Beyond that, there's Gyökeres at Sporting Lisbon, but Alexander Isak is ahead of him for Sweden. He's their number 1. He's their golden boy, as good as Gyökeres is. Beyond that, you've got wingers who score goals like Mo Salah, but they're not strikers who play through the middle. So they're the guys who are aging, the likes of Lewandowski and Harry Kane, are perhaps the wrong side of their peaks. In terms of a striker who's currently operating at the peak of their powers and is in a really good place, well, Alexander Isak is doing it in the best league in the world, better than anybody else right now. So is he the world's best? I'm not going to shy away from that. What do you think? Tell me, below the line, where is he in that ranking right now with Newcastle? If they can keep him fit, and happy and in form. I come back to all these same words at the time. Well, wow, what an advantage that gives them to have a player who can just make that impact and that difference with, and he's not just a one-man team, he's got that support network around him now. Sandro Tonali, Bruno Guimaraes, getting the ball to him much quicker in the areas he wants, where he can be so dangerous and he can impact. Anthony Gordon to the left of him. Now on Gordon, this isn't a criticism, it's an observation. It's actually a positive in many ways, because I still think Gordon has got another level to go to. He's playing very well right now, but the goals, he's getting himself into those positions, just that final little bit of execution. And if he went back to a player who adds double figures like he did last season, allied with Isak scoring goals through the middle and Jacob Murphy just getting goals and assists every week, well, wow, what a front line that is. So, yeah, guys, from the last time we spoke here, after the big week we built it as, you know, we said it could be a season-defining week. They've negotiated it with swagger, with minimum fuss as well. And I want to come back to this, you know, we said it was season-defining, we said it was huge, but they've actually gone about it in a really professional, clinical manner. It was what my video was all about on Wednesday night, you know, no excess emotion being spent. Just go out and beat these teams. That's what the best teams do. And Newcastle, the past week, have looked like one of the best teams. And just a quick word on Eddie Howe as well. During the difficult patch when I stuck by him, and, you know, my support of him, I've always been on the record and really strong with that on these videos and in print as well. A few came back to me and there was, not very pleasant really, some of the accusations and some of the criticism of my critique of the team and, you know, where I thought they were and the manager and everything else. But yeah, I think he's answered a lot of those questions in the past week. And just being inside with him there now, he had that sparkle back, he had that bounce. I think he's in a good place and the team are in a good place, because for me, I'll say it again, Newcastle have got the best manager for them right now. If Eddie went, and I don't think it's anywhere close to being that, and it shouldn't be anywhere close to being that. It never should have been. You can't get better. He's the best English manager out there. I'd extend that. I think that is doing him a disservice. I just think he's one of the very best managers out there. And yes, there was a rocky patch, but he rode it and he's found some answers. He's found some solutions. Now they've got to kick on and keep that going into the new year. Now news, Martin Dubrvaka. I wrote this in my confidential column last Thursday that the club hierarchy will let Dubrvaka decide on his future next month. I think there's a realisation that his contract is up in the summer. He turns 36. I think he's just had another baby as well. If he's got a lucrative offer on the table from Saudi Arabia, which we believe he has, and he sees that important for his life, for his personal circumstance, I think Newcastle will allow him to go, but only at the very back end of the window, once they know that Nick Pope is fit and there's been no complications in his knee injury. But for now, Eddie Howe has just said to us inside it would make no sense to allow Dubrvaka to go right now. He's played the last 3. By my calculations, he's almost certainly going to play the next 5 as well, including a Carabao Cup semi-final. But beyond that, will he go? Now, I think it's likely, but that really depends on the Nick Pope situation. My information on Pope is that he won't be back until the latter half of January. So that is one to wait and see and watch. And that was Eddie Howe's words. You know, let's see what the next few weeks brings. But certainly for now, Martin Dubrvaka won't be going to Saudi Arabia next week or even the week after. He's needed here, and he's actually done very well since he came back and made a big save down at Ipswich on Saturday at 1-0. So Dubrvaka stays for now. Now, what did Eddie Howe say about the prospect of somebody coming in to replace Dubrvaka if he did go? Well, he said those were conversations they were having, but he also said on the bigger picture January stuff that it might be better for the club if they didn't spend next month, and that would leave them in a stronger position in the summer. And this was something I wrote in the confidential column last week and 4 or 5 weeks ago when I wrote, you know, there wasn't necessarily that appetite and that money there to spend. We've been over this many times. You know, I'm not going to go over the reasons as to why. I know people said, well, you know, there was that £60 million there for Marquis in the summer. They still would have had to have sold now. And I think there's a view being taken in that if they don't spend now, it leaves them in a really strong position in the summer and future windows. So I'm arriving at the point now whereby I'm really expecting nothing to be done next month in terms of incomings, unless Dubrvaka goes and there's perhaps another goalkeeper, goodness, who can come in. We'll wait and see on that, but even that wouldn't be a given. Now, injuries and fitness. Joe Willock went off down in Ipswich with a bang to the head. He's fine. He's okay. He'll be in the squad. Joelinton missed Ipswich because of suspension. He's been to hospital. He's had a little bit of work, I think, stitches on the nasty ear injury he got against Brentford, but it sounds like he will be okay. As I said just before there, Sven Botman, there's an outside chance for the bench against Aston Villa. Nick Pope, we've talked about that. He's been rested. He's had some injections, but still no definitive date on when he comes back. Emil Krafth, now this is significant because they've got coming up. That Carabao Cup semi-final against Arsenal, for which Fabian Schär suspended. Now Krafth is back out running on the grass, but Eddie Howe said, crucially, only when he has contact training, we'll have a full idea of exactly when he is going to be back and what he is up to and what he's not up to at this stage. So where does that leave the team for Boxing Day against Aston Villa? Well, I think it might just be one change, and that'll be Joelinton coming back in for Joe Willock. And that's the right call. I don't want to see changes. I don't want to hear about red zones and Anthony Gordon and Sandro Tonali being out. You know, that team down at Brentford and Newcastle were beaten so badly. I looked at that team sheet and I just didn't like it. And yes, there was reasons for that. There was the information there that the players weren't in the right place. They were in that red zone. It would have been a risk to play them. Let's hope there's none of that on Boxing Day. Let's hope they've come out of Ipswich. And it wasn't a game where they had to expend loads of energy in the past week. Hasn't been. Again, I say that's one of the positives. That Liverpool game clearly took a lot out of the players. You can't be doing that every week. There's got to be more of a conservatism sometimes to what you do, and you can win 4-0 without going hell for leather, as good as Newcastle were down at Ipswich, because I would like to see that unchanged team just carry that feel-good and that momentum into Aston Villa. And prediction-wise, guys, home win. Villa's had a little bit of a revival of late. They've won 4 of the last 5, yes, but they haven't won away in the Premier League for more than 2 months now. And I think Newcastle at St James's, given everything that's happened the past week, that feel-good fixtures at St James's are always brilliant. There's always a buzz about the town. I think Newcastle will go and beat them. And I'm going to go for 3-2. Let's hope it's a bit of a Christmas classic. It was brilliant on the first day of last season, of course, wasn't it? The 5-1, when both teams actually played pretty well that day. But I'm going to go for a repeat in terms of the outcome. But yeah, 3-2 this time. So yeah, that's it for now, guys. And I won't see you until Boxing Day. So just to say, have a happy, safe Christmas. You know, the videos, the numbers, the interactions this year has been absolutely incredible. I've been out and about the last few days around Newcastle, and thank you so much to all of you who stop and come up and say hello to Ross, who I bumped into at the trampoline park with the kids yesterday. You know, I had a lovely conversation with him, a guy I'd never met before. We stood for 5 minutes talking about Newcastle. I had no idea where my kids were, to be honest with you, but yeah, we spoke about the second half of the season and the excitement around that. Tony Mack, who I bumped into in Fitzgerald's on Saturday afternoon, he told me he falls to sleep. To me, that's one of the best compliments I've ever had, Tony. Honestly, I meant it when I said that. You know, how comforting that is. When I was a little boy, I couldn't go to sleep in a quiet room. I used to put Only Fools and Horses on, or Vida's and Pets, so the sound of Ours and Del Boy, well, that's my comfort blanket. So if I am that to you, isn't that lovely to hear? I think I took that the right way. But, you know, countless others as well. I was out and about in town on Saturday. The amount of folk who just want to chat, and it was on the back of that Ipswich result as well. So, you know, it was all positive and all really exciting for what that second half of the season could bring. So again, just thank you so much. Please, all you can do in return is hit like, subscribe and comment and interact. This is so clean, it's so pure, very different to certain other platforms. I love it, guys, and I hope you enjoy it too. So have a lovely Christmas, and I'll see you on Boxing Day, where I will be walking up and down the Milburn stand reflecting on a home win. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.